The recording.
Okay. So where's this going here? Thank you.
Judge Lang is on mute.
I don't know.
Mute? No.
He unmuted himself.
Is your volume up or down?
No, let's find out. How do I get out of there to find out my... How do I get out
Jeff,
of
we
here?
can hear you fine.
Julia,
Jeff, we can hear you.
how do I exit this whole thing so I can
Leave?
leave? Here.
You're good, Jeff.
Leave the meeting?
Yeah.
Or not. Maybe
No, I guess he can leave now. I guess he's decided to leave us.
that's right. Well, that'll be a quicker meeting then.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
Well, I'm just great. Hope
Good.
you are too.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh. Tori?
Governor Carruthers,
Yes, sir.
I have some greetings to send to you from Tom Haran and that ilk.
I'll be doggone. Tell him hello for me.
Had lunch with him recently. Yeah. So I don't know how that speaks of us, but we're both pretty good friends of his. So we have that to worry about.
Well, is our governor going to take a job with President Biden?
Yeah. You know those parlor games better than we do.
Well, I keep getting conflicting reports. I just read an article a few moments ago that she was out. But then I read one yesterday that was a mistake. She might be in.
Yeah.
But it's no telling, but it's a powerful job to be
Yeah.
a cabinet member.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
But I did write to a friend that it's a whole lot better to be governor in New Mexico than it is to be a cabinet member with any president.
I would
It's
think
the
so.
best work you can get.
Yeah, I would think so.
Tori?
Jeremy, I'm going to wait for you and or Walker to tell me when the green light is on.
Well, I'll go ahead and start with some preliminaries. It is a minute till 9, and there is a quorum of the commission, so we can start at 9 as scheduled. For members of the public who are following along on today's meeting, our meeting materials are and have been up on the transparency page of the website. So you can just click over to that and follow along with what the commission's doing. And commissioners, I want to introduce to you Rebecca Branch, who started with us on Monday. Rebecca's the Deputy General Counsel, and she's coming over from the Office of Superintendent of Insurance. She was previously at the Attorney General's office and had a career in private practice before that. And she's exactly the kind of attorney we need to kind of help push forward in building this agency. And I'm just really excited to have her as a part of the team. And so welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. I'm really happy to be here.
Morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, Rebecca.
Hi, Becky. Nice to see
Hi,
you.
Judge. How are you?
I haven't seen you in a very long time. It's nice to see you, and I'm glad you joined us.
Me too. I'm looking forward to it.
Good.
And Walker, I see you're kind of actively admitting members of the public. So I'll just-
Sonny's helping me out here.
Okay. Thank you, Sonny. So for members of the public that have just joined us, if you want to follow along with the commission today, the meeting materials are on the transparency page of the commission's website. So just click over there. And Judge, I think with that, we're ready to get started. Commissioner Bluestone has just joined us.
Okay. That being the case, we are all in. I will, excuse me, call the meeting to order and begin with call of the roll. Commissioner Baker.
Present.
Commissioner Bluestone. We'll skip him for the time being. Commissioner Carruthers,
Present.
Commissioner Solomon,
Present.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Present.
and Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Note that the chair is present. Commissioner Bluestone, are you fully with us now?
I think it looks like he's with us, but it looks like he might be having some microphone issues.
Okay. Are you satisfied that he qualifies as present? Walker, you're looking at him. I'm not, but I will take the word for
The
it.
minutes will reflect that he is present.
All right, there we go. Next is approval of agenda. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second, no discussion. Commissioner Baker,
I approve.
Commissioner Bluestone, Commissioner Carruthers.
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Approve.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Approve.
and Commissioner Williams.
Yes, so approve.
Thank you. Chair approves. The agenda is approved. Thence to the approval of the October 2nd, 2020 commission meeting minutes. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Commissioner Baker,
I approve.
Commissioner Bluestone, Commissioner Carruthers,
Approve.
Mr. Solomon,
Approve.
Mr. Villanueva,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Approve.
Thank you. Chair approves as well. Okay, next we will move to item number 4, which is the approval of proposed code of ethics for state agencies. And I'll turn it over to the executive director. Jeremy?
Great, thanks, Chair. So the materials before you today include and begin with the revised proposed code of ethics for state agencies. So this version, as you can see at the top on page 8 of the meeting materials, it includes all of the changes that Commissioners Villanueva and Commissioner Williams requested or proposed before the October 2nd meeting. That's in red text. It also includes all of the changes that the commission made at the October 2nd meeting. That's also in red text. And it also includes all of the changes that Commissioner Bluestone has recommended after the October 2nd meeting, and that's in blue text. The commission has had this document since November the 19th. I know that Governor Carruthers has expressed a preference to try not to draft this in committee. And as the commission has done in 2 previous meetings, there's been a lot of thought already put into this document. The staff feels like it's responsive to every point that the commission has raised thus far. And so, Chair, the staff seeks a motion that the commission approve this version of the proposed code of ethics for state agencies and authorize the staff to transmit the same to the State Records and Archive Center.
Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes. I have some issues here. I don't have issues, just my review of this. In reading this, I'm always a little bit confused as to if it's applicable to state legislators, lobbyists, and contractors for the government. What I am not comfortable with, and I think I've stated this before, it's proposed. And I am not sure if it's proposed, then if somebody adopts it, then from an agency, then they have to go under. What is that? Well, they have to go, they have to go under this code of ethics. But then we have organizations that would not approve it. And so they don't come under this because it's proposed. But does their code of ethics, if they have one, what happens if someone wants to file a complaint under their code of ethics, do they hear the complaint or do we hear the complaint? And my other concern is if they don't have any code of ethics, is there a requirement for them to have one? And that's what I've been so concerned about, because if people can say, yes, I will go ahead and we will accept your the code of ethics, that's fine. For those agencies who make their own code of ethics, then how is that adjudicated? And for those people who don't want to have a code of ethics, do they have to have one? Is there something that requires them to have one? And then for those who do have of their own, do we have to review them? Do we see them? Do we have to approve them? That's my concern about this proposed code of ethics, because it's proposed. And I'm confused about the procedures of those who have their own or don't have any at all.
Chair and Commissioner Williams, I think I can answer all of those questions. So first, with respect to which agencies must issue codes of ethics / codes of conduct, the Governmental Conduct Act speaks to that. So all agencies that have elected heads, so for example, the Attorney General's office or the state auditor or the Secretary of State, those agencies are required to issue codes of conduct under the Governmental Conduct Act. For all the other state agencies, it's optional. For any state agency, whether or not the head of the agency is elected or not, any state agency that under the Governmental Conduct Act that issues a code of conduct, they have to file it with the State Ethics Commission. So in that way, the State Ethics Commission kind of serves as a repository. Now, with respect to the enforcement of the agency codes of conduct, that's done by the agencies and not the State Ethics Commission. So if an agency issues its own internal code of conduct, violations of that internal code of conduct can be the basis for employee discipline. And that kind of, if the employee is a classified employee, an employee in the personnel service, then that's subject to the State Personnel Board's rules for discipline and appeals to the State Personnel Board. The State Ethics Commission isn't involved in the business of issuing discipline based on infractions of agency codes of conduct or agency codes of ethics. The State Ethics Commission enforces and adjudicates violations of the statutes, the Governmental Conduct Act, the Lobbyist Regulation Act, the Campaign Reporting Act, the Anti-Donation Clause, et cetera. And so the Ethics Commission's role in terms of internal agency codes of conduct is really just to supply a model code, a proposed code that agencies can elect to use and be the repository for those codes. But the Ethics Commission's business of adjudication and enforcement, that's really with respect to the statutes.
No worries.
Okay.
505-660. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? And Stuart, I have stepped in and I've asked Walker to hook you up. So that should be coming on. Stuart is dialing in. Any other discussion? If not, I'll go ahead and call the question on the motion. And Commissioner Baker.
I approve this proposed code.
And the rest of the motion, which goes to advancing it.
I'm sorry?
And the motion would seek to advance it procedurally.
That's right.
Okay. Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes, if you can hear me.
We can.
We can.
Nice to hear your dulcet tones. Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So the motion is approved. Thank you very much. And thank you all for the good work. That was a slog getting that done. And I thank every member of the staff, the public, and the commissioners who worked so diligently on that. Thanks very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just made a note after reading this. and I believe I brought it up at another time, we're really going to need about a 2-pager that explains this thing. After you grind through this and you have to reel back a little bit to remember exactly what topic you're under. It's very legalistic, but I don't see very many even department heads or agency heads reading this entire thing. We're going to need some kind of document that kind of spells out so that they understand what they're agreeing to or not agreeing to. So
Would that be something in law and gov with like an executive summary?
Executive summary or something that says, generally speaking, this is what's in here, so that everyone doesn't have to read through the entire document. And we've gone through it several times, but many agency heads are not going to be willing to do that. And so if you're going to ask them to adopt it, we need an instrument to encourage them to adopt it and to explain it in terms that they can quickly grasp.
That makes a lot of sense, right, Jeremy?
Yes, thanks, Chair and Governor Carruthers. The plan after the code is promulgated in the NMAC, we'll put it on the website. We have a lot of commentary and examples that relate to each of the provisions, and the idea is to put this all on the website and to hyperlink to the examples and the commentary in a way that corresponds with the code provisions, and also to begin with exactly what you said, Governor Carruthers, a kind of 1 to 2 page summary of what this code is doing. And so the work certainly doesn't end on this project with just the transmission to state records and archives.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Item number 5 on the agenda is the amendment to Resolution 4. Jeremy?
Okay, thanks, Chair. So since the October 2nd meeting, the staff noticed an inconsistency between 1.8.3 NMAC, the Commission's Rules of Procedure for the Adjudication of Administrative Complaints, and Resolution 4, the guidelines by which the Commission staff and the Commission investigate, authorize, and pursue civil enforcement actions in state court. So whereas the Commission's rules, the NMAC, says that referrals from other state agencies which are not notarized may be treated as administrative complaints by the State Ethics Commission, and that's at 1.8.3.9A5 of the NMAC. Resolution 4 says that non-notarized other agency referrals will be treated as Commission administrative complaints. And because the rules that the Commission has promulgated in the NMAC are the law, and because they better align with the State Ethics Commission Act's main rule that administrative complaints must be notarized, and moreover, because the rules are the better idea, it provides more flexibility for the Commission to decide how to treat referrals from other state agencies, we're recommending that the Commission amend Resolution 4 in a way that makes it consistent with the rules. So in the meeting materials before you on page 25 and 26 of the meeting materials is where you can see that amendment to Resolution number 4 that makes Resolution number 4 consistent with the provisions of the administrative code. And so, Chair, the staff seeks a motion that the Commission adopt Resolution 4 as amended.
All right, is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
So, second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, I have some questions. On
Yeah,
this-
go ahead.
On page 25, it says administrative complaints means an allegation of an actual or potential violation of ethics. But what if the agency has not accepted this code? Can they do it under their own regulations? I think you maybe have answered that.
Chair and Commissioner Williams, I believe I did. The Resolution number 4 is, and the rules of procedure speak to parts of the Ethics Commission's work that don't relate to agency internal codes. Resolution 4 speaks to how the commission authorizes and pursues civil enforcement actions in state court. And the rules 1.8.3 of the enact govern how the commission adjudicates administrative complaints that are filed with the commission. So neither of what's before the commission at the moment really interact with the codes of conduct that the state agencies adopt.
And then I thank you. I have another question on paragraph 4C. It says it does not include the general counsel. Why not? Staff refers to
Chair and Commissioner Williams, could you point me to which page of the materials you're looking at?
25,
Okay.
paragraph C.
I can take this.
Okay, please do, Walker.
Chair and Commissioner Williams, the reason that commission staff is defined in this policy to exclude the general counsel is to ensure that I'm not involved formally in Jeremy's decision as to whether to ask you all for a lawsuit or the authority to do a lawsuit, and so that there's a kind of separation at the initial stage of the investigation, which at some later point my approval is required before the commission is going to hear about a case. But at that initial stage, when the commission staff are assessing information, I'm not the one I'm not involved formally, which means that I'm not going to be involved in steering allegations one way or the other, whether they can come in as an informal complaint or whether as a notarized complaint. So, because I think Jeremy is the one tasked with the commission's jurisdictional determinations, and we don't want to mix up our roles.
On page 26, paragraph 6(3) in parentheses, I had a question about that. It says the executive director's approval. So it says the executive director must determine whether the assessment is based on factors other than the exercise of the First Amendment activities, etc., or race, ethnicity, national origin. I didn't understand that.
So Chair and Commissioner Williams, 2 points. So first, these questions really aren't about the amendment language that's before the commission and subject to the motion. But Chair, I'll answer in anyway. So Commissioner Williams, what this paragraph is doing is ensuring that if a member of the staff, supposing that other members of the staff are conducting investigations for potential enforcement actions under the laws that the commission is empowered to enforce through lawsuits, that they kind of bring that idea to the executive director, and the executive director must make sure that the proposal to pursue a lawsuit against that person isn't based on illegitimate and unlawful factors such as race or ethnicity or party membership or political affiliation or the exercise of any First Amendment activity. So this is a guideline that ensures that before the executive director ever brings an enforcement action for authorization to the commission, that the director has already done their work to make sure that the reason why this enforcement action is going forward isn't based on any unlawful criteria.
Would that be in another venue then? If someone brings an issue of exercise of First Amendment activities or, Title VII's issues such as, discrimination based on national origin, race, etc.
I don't think it would be another venue. It would never be a basis for the Ethics Commission to pursue a lawsuit.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Commissioner Williams? No. Anybody else? Any discussion on the motion? If not, questions called. Commissioner Baker?
I'm in favor.
Commissioner Bluestone? He's in favor. He's having some audio difficulties. I assume that he is. I will circle back around. I know he and Walker are chatting with one another on.
He's on mute again.
Yeah, and they're trying to figure that out on the sideline there. Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams? Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Stuart, are you back on?
I think so. Can you hear me?
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Are you prepared to vote on the motion?
Yes, and I'm prepared to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's nice to have you completely aboard.
Well, it's a complicated scenario here. I'm on with my phone on the microphone, not on the computer. So I apologize for these problems.
That's fine. Santa Fe is the city different. We're all used to that. So, okay. Now, item number 6, Jeremy, is approval of the 2020 annual report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So commissioners, as you know, the State Ethics Commission Act requires the commission to submit to the governor and the legislature an annual report in December of each year of the commission's activities. The annual report before you provides an overview of the commission's work from July the 1st, 2019, when 5 of you were appointed in the rotunda of the Capitol, through the end of 2020, covering 5 areas rather of the commission's work: the adjudication of administrative complaints, advisory opinions, civil litigation, the code of ethics, and trainings. The report also makes legislative recommendations and provides discussion drafts of 2 bills that the commission will prioritize and overtly advocate for in the upcoming session. One bill which proposes technical but needed changes to the State Ethics Commission Act. The other bill, which is a joint bill with the Secretary of State's office, amending the enforcement and administrative provisions of the Campaign Reporting Act, the Lobbyist Regulation Act, and the Voter Action Act. The annual report is before you in the meeting materials at pages 30 through 73. This is the second draft of the annual report that you've seen. The document is a draft at this point because it must be updated to reflect the actions that take place in today's meeting, including legislative recommendations that the commission approves toward the end of the meeting. The second draft differs from the first draft that you saw in 2 ways. It incorporates changes that commissioners have already requested, and it replaces the attachment 2, which previously in the first draft was a Word document with an LCS discussion draft of where the bill that we're jointly working on with the Secretary of State currently is. And just so the commissioners know, we've also received a discussion draft from the Legislative Counsel Service with respect to the bill amending the State Ethics Commission Act, and that will be replaced as attachment 1 whenever this annual report is submitted to the governor and the legislature. And so, Chair, the staff seek a motion to submit the annual report to the governor and the legislature to include any changes that the commission approves in the meeting later today regarding legislative amendments.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second? And then we'll move on to discussion.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Is the 2-year prohibition that's on the recommendation for amendments to the Lobbyist Regulation Act, is that currently in statute anywhere? It's on page 48. Former statewide elected officials shall not accept compensation as lobbyists for 2 calendar years. Is that new to New Mexico? Is there any place that prohibition exists?
Chair and Governor Carruthers, I believe that this would be a new addition to the Lobbyist Regulation Act.
Yeah, it struck me as being new, and therefore it might be pretty challenging to get that passed. It's not that I disagree with it at all. Really, the better part of valor is is to follow the federal act, which sort of has tiers. You know, if you had nothing to do with a subject that's being lobbied when you were in that position, you can lobby. If you had anything to do with it, there's certain prohibitions for how long you have to be out of office before you can in fact participate in a discussion on that. That's a little more complex. I don't have any particular problem with a 2-year prohibition. I think it might be kind of challenging to get it passed, but I just wondered where it came from.
So, Chair and Governor Carruthers, the pedigree of these amendments to the Lobbyist Regulation Act, I believe, began with the presentation from New Mexico Ethics Watch and their recommendations to the commission for amendments to the Lobbyist Regulation Act. And some of these amendments have other histories that go back before that presentation to the commission. I know that Commissioner Bluestone has also been thinking about some of these amendments to the Lobbyist Regulation Act. And perhaps at that point in the agenda, after the public has a chance to comment on which recommendations the commission should push in the upcoming session, the commission can make amendments to change these recommendations. Chair and Governor Carruthers, I'll also add that the annual report, it kind of breaks out the recommendations for what the commission will be pursuing in the upcoming session into more or less 2 tiers. One tier is the legislative work that's currently in discussion drafts that the commission will overtly push for. And the other is amendments to other statutes that the commission is thinking about and would support if a bill along these lines were introduced by a legislator, but short of the commission drafting up a discussion draft through the Legislative Counsel Service in a state agency bill and going forward and trying to find a legislature to introduce it. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else?
Yes, Chair, I have
Mr. Williams?
several questions. First of all, Commissioner Carruthers, in the federal government, I think after you leave office, you cannot take a job with anybody you've done business with for about 2 years, because I know that was true in procurement and even in my own position. So I just want to make that point. On page 44, where it talks about trainings, and it talks about the training that will be given to people. What training material is given at this training? Has there been training material developed so far? Has this training been given, et cetera?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, yes, we've developed several kinds of training materials for different kinds of trainings. So the one training that Walker and I have been giving throughout the year is a continuing legal education class about the Commission's rules of procedure for adjudicating administrative complaints. That was kind of the emphasis on training in the first year of the Commission's work, was just to familiarize the bar with how the Commission's rules of procedure work for adjudicating administrative complaints. So there's one kind of tranche of training materials that are responsive to that need. The Commission under the Governmental Conduct Act is also responsible for providing Governmental Conduct Act trainings to everyone in the state to whom that act applies. So that's all state employees of local governments, municipal governments, county governments, and officials as well. And we're also developing a separate kind of universe of training materials under the Governmental Conduct Act. We have a contract with Paul Biederman to help prepare those trainings, and that will be a large part of the work that Rebecca will be doing for the Commission. So the answer is yes. There's multiple kinds of trainings we're offering with multiple kind of universes of training materials.
Okay, and then on page 46, this talks about the requirement for us to file financial disclosures. My first question is, do we have to do that yearly?
So Chair and Commissioner Williams, if currently the commissioners are not subject to the Financial Disclosure Act, you have all voluntarily elected to file financial disclosures in 2020. If the State Ethics Commission Acts and the Financial Disclosure Act are amended to require you to file financial disclosure statements as the commission is currently proposing, then yes, you would be required to file a financial disclosure statement in January of every year. And the reason that this recommendation is sound is because it's fair. If the commission is tasked to enforce the Financial Disclosure Act against all the employees of the state that are required to file financial disclosure statements, it only seems to be fair that the commissioners themselves would file financial disclosure statements.
Yeah, I had a question though about that, because somewhere it says that if you have anything over $5,000, then you should list, what those are, which include investments. Is that correct?
So, Chair and Commissioner Williams, this question kind of again goes a bit beyond what the Commission's recommending with the amendment to the Financial Disclosure Act. But yes, the Financial Disclosure Act requires for income, sources of income north of $5,000 that the filer kind of break out the source of that income. I believe currently, if it's investment income, the Financial Disclosure Act provides that you could just say general stock market holdings or income, dividend income, I suppose, north of $5,000. But I don't believe the Financial Disclosure Act currently requires more in the way of disclosure than that with respect to that category of income.
Now, can anybody request those financial disclosures?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, yes, the financial disclosure statements are subject to public view.
I think my relatives will see how much money I have and hit me up for a loan. Okay, I think I have, oh yes, on page 49, there was proposed amendments, and it says on page 49, paragraph M, respondent means a person against whom the complaint has been filed. So you want to change that to defendant.
Chair and Commissioner Williams, no, not at 2M on page 49, but rather on section 9F of the State Ethics Commission Act, which in your materials would be at page 51.
Okay.
Is where defendant would be substituted for respondent. And the reason is to make that venue provision of the statute more clear.
So we will continue using respondent, but after we pass this, if we approve it, would it become defendants?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, no, ma'am. The term respondent will continue to be used in the commission's work in adjudicating administrative complaints. It's the commission's quasi-judicial power to adjudicate administrative complaints that are filed with the commission. This will still be complainant versus respondent. But when the commission participates in civil litigation in the state courts, the correct parlance is plaintiff and defendant, and where the commission would be the plaintiff and the defendant would be the defendant. And so we're just making clear that this provision of the State Ethics Commission Act, which deals with the power of the commission to file lawsuits in state court, that the the person that we're filing the lawsuit against is the defendant.
Okay, thank you. I have no
Thank
further
you.
questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Bluestone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that what we're discussing right now is whether to approve the annual report subject to changes that we are still going to be discussing regarding the proposed legislation, which, as Jeremy described, is on two levels. One is the affirmative legislation that we as a commission are seeking sponsorship of and that we are going to be pushing ourselves. And then the second is a series of issues regarding lobbyists or other matters that we are willing to take a position on if other legislation gets introduced, but that we're not going to be affirmatively pushing for ourselves. So I just wanted to clarify that all this discussion about legislation is still going to come later, and that will affect what we actually end up finalizing as the annual report. But with respect to the comment on the annual report, I simply wanted to make two observations. One is, I think it's great, and I'm happy to endorse it and have it be circulated. But consistent with our public education mission, I also think it would be helpful if some kind of an op-ed or other more summarized public document could be distributed along the lines of what Governor Carruthers was saying earlier about the proposed code of ethics. And I think actually it would be good to do a couple of op-eds, one on the salient features of the annual report, which I hope we're going to approve here shortly. But I think also, consistent with what Governor Carruthers said, it would be good to do a separate op-ed in our public education effort to summarize and describe the key features of the proposed code of ethics that we just adopted. So I throw that out there in the discussion of our consideration of adopting the annual report and, of course, the proposed code of ethics, which is included in the annual report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'd like to say something.
Yes, ma'am.
The annual report, as I read through it, I just realized that it describes a number of statutory requirements that Jeremy was able to help us work through in less than 18 months.
Yeah.
And it's really impressive. And it just proves to me my suspicion that Jeremy is Superman. So I want to thank him and his little group of his very small group of superheroes for all they've done for the commission and all they'll continue to do on our behalf.
Thank you. And I would echo that sentiment. Thank you, Judy. Anybody else? Okay. Question is before us. Approval of the annual report subject to today's actions on proposed legislation. And Commissioner Baker.
yes,
Commissioner Bluestone.
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers.
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon. Commissioner Solomon.
He's muted, Walker.
He's muted.
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
Commissioner Solomon.
He's
Yes.
voted yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Villanueva
Yes.
and Commissioner Williams.
yes.
And chair votes yes as well. Thank you. The motion carries. Item number 7, resolution number 6. Jeremy.
Okay, thank you. And Chair and Commissioner Villanueva, if there's any special power that I have, it's only that I've attracted very talented people here to work at the commission. And that's the real source of what we've been able to achieve in this short amount of time. So resolution 6, in anticipation of the upcoming session, whether that is in January or in April, and at this point, I believe that we're not certain when the legislature is going to get to the policy part of the session as opposed to the budgetary and COVID related part of the session. But whenever the commission is confronted with a proper 60-day session, the commission staff need authorization that allows the staff to respond to the events in the session without needing to convene a special meeting of the commission for authorization on each point that might come up. And so to that end, the staff have drafted resolution number 6, by which the commission would authorize the staff to offer testimony on the technical and budgetary implications of any bills affecting the commission's work. And it would also authorize the staff to offer testimony on the merits of bills impacting the commission's work, provided that the director consults with the chair and the commissioner appointed by the minority floor leader of the Senate, who currently is Governor Carruthers, or their designees if they're unavailable, and the general counsel. And the authorization would also require the director to weekly inform the commission about the progress of any and all bills affecting the commission's work. And so that's roughly what resolution number 6 does, and the staff seeks a motion that the commission adopt it.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second?
I'll make that.
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I've got a question.
Yes.
Does this require staff to register as lobbyists?
Chair and Commissioner Baker, I believe the answer is no. I don't believe the Lobbyist Regulation Act would extend to the work of state agency employees and working on bills.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Can you tell me what page of that resolution is on? My next page was
74.
It's 74. Okay. I vote yes.
All right, so question having been called, we'll go in reverse order. Commissioner Williams votes yes. Commissioner Villanueva,
Votes yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. All right, I did that backwards without referring to notes. I want you to know that.
Good.
Chair, the minutes will so reflect. Sonny?
Thank you. Okay. Item number 8, Jeremy and Wendy, Commissioner per diem reimbursements for virtual attendance.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Commissioners, this is an issue that Wendy and I can't decide ourselves. It's something that we think that you need to decide as a commission. So recently, the Financial Control Division of DFA waived its requirement of in-person attendance at board and commission meetings for per diem payments. That was a requirement that the former state controller put in place to deal with the problem that was happening with certain commissions and state agencies around the state, where members would call into a meeting that was happening in person and then request per diem based on just calling into the meeting as opposed to the in-person attendance. And because that rule didn't really work for the current environment of state agencies having to operate with respect to the pandemic, the Financial Control Division waived that requirement of in-person attendance for per diem payments. The waivers, it is in effect while COVID-19 restrictions are in place. And as such, the Financial Control Division will now accept board member and commissioner requests for per diem for attendance at virtual meetings going back to the beginning of FY21. And per diem rates for non-salaried state public officials like yourselves are $95 per meeting. And the Financial Control Division is allowing each state agency to determine for itself whether or not per diem reimbursement for virtual attendance is appropriate. And the DFA will also ask the legislature for clarification on the word attendance in the Per Diem and Mileage Act at an upcoming legislative session. And so as options for you to consider, the commission could resolve that each individual commissioner will decide individually whether or not to receive per diem reimbursements, or the commission could resolve that no member of the commission will receive per diem reimbursements for virtual attendance. So to kind of give you an idea of the law, on the one hand, Section 1084A of the Per Diem and Mileage Act allows for up to $95 per diem payment for each meeting attended. The statute doesn't define the term attended, but under the regulations issued by DFA, per diem rates are paid without regard to whether or not expenses are actually incurred. Nor does the DFA regulations define the word attend, but they do define a board or commission meeting as a formal convening of public officers who comprise a commission, even if no business can take place because of a lack of quorum. And the DFA's rules and the Model Accounting Practices Manual also make clear that the DFA pays per diem if the commissioner presents a certificate of attendance and the meeting minutes qualify as that certificate. And so under one reading of the Per Diem and Mileage Act and the DFA rules, the Financial Control Division is completely sound in its payment of reimbursements for virtual attendance. On the other hand, and the reason why you might elect not to receive per diem payments for virtual attendance is that the purpose section of the Per Diem and Mileage Act, section 1082 of the New Mexico Statutes Annotated, says that the purpose of the Per Diem and Mileage Act is to establish rates for the reimbursement for travel for public officers and employees coming under the act. And so the purpose section seems to tie the reimbursement regime for travel, although other sections of the Per Diem and Mileage Act don't exactly spell that out with the definition of the word attended. So that's the kind of the lay of the land briefly with respect to the law. The budget impact would be a maximum of about $6,000 for FY21 if all commissioners elected to receive per diem reimbursements for virtual meetings. And that maximum is not an amount that I expect that the commission would even broach, because several of you elect not to receive per diem and have never received per diem for your work on the commission. And so with that, and subject to anything else that Wendy might like to add, or any questions that you might have of her, the commission makes a motion either to the effect that the commission will not take per diem, or leave it up to the individual commissioners to decide whether or not to take per diem.
Wendy, do you want to add anything?
Chair Lang and Commissioners, now Jeremy is very thorough. He covered anything I would have added. So thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Governor.
I just want to comment that I personally don't think it would be very ethical to take per diem for doing virtual meetings. I mean, it costs a little electricity to have my computer on, but it would be on anyway. I walked approximately 15 feet from my house to my office, and so I can't charge much mileage for that. It seems to me like it's somewhat unethical to receive payment for per diem when there actually no cost to my being on this thing on a virtual basis. And I want to start with that discussion. If others have different opinion before we make a motion, then I just wanted to maybe ask other people their views before we make a motion.
And that was exactly where I was going to go. And I share your exact concerns, given what my understanding of what per diem is for. When I'm not traveling anywhere, and I'm not coming out of pocket for anything. But yeah, prior to enlisting support for any sort of motion or hearing one, What do any of the other commissioners besides Governor Carruthers and the chair have comments they would like to make?
Yes, I have a comment. I would like to have it to where it's up to the commissioners to whether or not they want to receive it or not. And my reason for that is because if I have those funds, then I can use them to provide some other things that I'm interested in, some charity. So that is what I would like to have it to where the commissioners, you just leave it up to them.
Thank you. Let's see, anybody else? Let's go back up the top. Commissioner Baker, do you have any thoughts prior to a motion being entertained?
I think it really depends on what per diem is supposed to accomplish. My understanding is that it is supposed to be reimbursement for travel expenses, meals, hotels, stuff like that. And it is not supposed to be income, so to speak. Now, I understand that for some people, it will supplement their income. I don't know if the financial circumstances of anybody on the commission other than myself, but if the purpose of per diem is reimbursement and we are not paying anything to attend these meetings virtually, then I think it is appropriate not to receive per diem. I understand Commissioner Williams' position with respect to she'd like to be able to use the $95 and give it to a food bank, for example. But I agree with Commissioner Carruthers that this is not plugging in your computer is not an expense that needs to be reimbursed. And also just in terms of the optics, I think it's better that as a commission, we say, as long as this pandemic is taking place and as long as we're meeting virtually, we are not going to receive per diem.
Thank you. Commissioner Bluestone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think all the comments have been very thoughtful, and I think Jeremy gave us a good overview. I understand that there's a good legal argument to leave it up to each commissioner too, and that the Per Diem and Mileage Act itself is inconsistent. But while I know that legislators typically get paid per diem for each day that they are in a legislative session, even though they're not traveling that day, they're just there doing the work. I think that given that purpose section of the Per Diem and Mileage Act that Jeremy recited, that it sends a bad signal for us as ethics commissioners to be accepting payment in these pandemic circumstances. I think it would be in the interest of the state for the legislature to change the law and to clarify if they intend the Per Diem and Mileage Act to apply for the daily service that people are given when they're doing it virtually like we are, or whether they have to travel. But given the current law and the current statement and the purpose of the Per Diem and Mileage Act, I come down on the side of thinking that we as the Ethics Commission should take a stand of, unless and until the law gets changed, we as a commission will not be accepting the per diem and mileage for these virtual meeting attendances. So I'd be open to doing it that way.
Thank you. Commissioner Carruthers, you have spoken. I assume you haven't thought of anything else because you're always coaching.
No, I think Judy and Ron haven't spoken yet. Though,
right, that's where I'm going. It's that alphabetical thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Commissioner Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and colleagues of the commission. I would be really uncomfortable receiving per diem, paying particular attention to what Stuart pointed out, the purpose section of the Mileage and Per Diem Act, and just like Governor Carruthers, you know, I marched down the hallway and I'm here at my office, and that ain't much mileage. So I don't know. I just cannot make the two things work. And I definitely respect Commissioner Williams' approach to this as well. But I just don't think any of us would feel comfortable. Well, maybe several of us wouldn't feel comfortable receiving per diem and mileage in the context of all of our work and the statutory provisions that would seem to apply to us as well. So that's where I'm at. I just wouldn't feel comfortable receiving it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Commissioner Villanueva?
I'm not going to say anything new. I think that it's clear that reimbursement should be made for travel and mileage and not for making discretionary donations.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I
Commissioner.
move that the commission not accept per diem for virtual meetings.
Thank you. Is there a
I'll
second?
second that.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion, any further discussion? All right, hearing none. Commissioner Baker?
I vote in favor of Governor Carruthers' motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Thank you. The motion carries. Okay, now I'll seek a motion that the commission go into executive session as outlined in the agenda relative to for us to consider administrative adjudicatory proceedings and attorney-client privilege matters.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Once again, Commissioner Baker,
I approve.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers,
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. So let's go ahead and give Walker a minute to rearrange the rooms.
Walker, please take Rebecca into executive session too.
Governor Carruthers, will you take the wheel for a minute? I have to step down the hall.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Williams, I would just note that we've returned to open session.
So can I ask a question in open session with regard to a discussion that we will be having, or are we going to have on page 53? Which is a discussion draft.
I believe that is going to be up for discussion later on in the meeting.
Okay.
Commissioner Williams.
Well, the way this was paginated was confusing. Thank you. There you are. We missed your smiling face.
You talking to me, Francis?
I am.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm having my computer difficulties here again.
Get a new computer.
I know, my wife and I were just talking about that.
Uh,
Thank you.
Walker, you let me know when we're good to go, okay?
We're just waiting on Commissioner Villanueva.
That's fine.
And yeah, if I'm trying to keep a lid on crosstalk, so I've disabled folks' ability to unmute themselves. So if any of you all have issues talking, raise your hand. I'll try and get you unmuted.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I know you're a baseball fan. I just read a book by Yogi Berra, or about Yogi Berra.
yeah.
It's really a great read. A lot of philosophy in that book.
Imagine there is. Is it a relatively new book?
Yeah, I think so. It's the last year or two, but I read it and it's interesting. Yogi actually became rather wealthy, even though everybody thought he was kind of a stooge. He actually managed his affairs, his financial affairs, very well.
Yeah, I have always appreciated his sense of humor, and as I grew a little older, I began to appreciate that it was a little more strategic than maybe we all appreciated.
Did he play for the Dodgers?
Yeah, he actually played most of his years with the Yankees. Then he played some for the Mets briefly.
Right.
And then he managed both the Yankees and the Mets. He had a long history in baseball.
Yep.
All right, looks like we are all here, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And thank you for that tip, Governor. I'll ask Santa Claus for that.
It's also verbal and audible.
We are back on in open session, and item number 12, Jeremy, I'm going to turn it to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Administrative case number 2027. Staff seeks a motion that the commission instruct staff to continue the investigation of the complaint under section 1016G 11A of the State Ethics Commission Act.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, then I will ask for a vote to approve on the motion, or a vote on the motion. Commissioner Baker?
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
And Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair votes yes. Also, the motion is passed. Okay, moving on to 12B.
Okay, thanks, Chair. In administrative case 2020-31, staff seeks a motion to enter an order dismissing claims that complainant alleged against respondent based on pre-July 1st, 2019 conduct.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers,
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. The motion carries. 12C.
Thank you, Chair. In administrative case 2020-33, staff seeks a motion to enter an order dismissing claims for lack of jurisdiction.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner, any discussion? Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers,
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. 12C, the motion carries. Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 13 on the agenda, which is authorizations regarding Council for Competitive New Mexico. Jeremy?
Thank you, Chair. Staff seeks a motion that the commission adopt Resolution 7, authorizing a demand letter and civil action to enforce the provisions of the Campaign Reporting Act against the Council for Competitive New Mexico.
Okay,
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Not. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers,
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, the motion passes. All right, we are now at the public comment portion. And whoever at the controls, and it always, I forget, is everybody in already, Walker?
Everyone's here. I think there's an item about the meeting determination of the next meeting. Am I wrong on that order, Jeremy? Or
I've got that later.
Yeah,
okay.
we're going to public comment now.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry about that.
No worries. I'm gonna let you, whoever, you two decide who's gonna run the.
I'm happy. Jeremy has been emceeing for much of the meeting, so I'm happy to handle the public comment portion.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna be going through, because we've designated public comment. I know there are some folks here who want to comment about the upcoming legislative session. I'm gonna go one by one through the participants and ask them if they would like to make a comment, and I'm gonna ask them to unmute themselves. So we'll just go one by one. First up, we have Mr. Brian Metzger. Sir, I'm asking you to unmute, and you can either accept or decline and offer public comment. All right. We'll give Mr. Metzger a moment here if he wants to talk. If not, we'll go on to the next person.
Hi, yes, I have no comment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Metzger. Next up is Mr. Clifford Rees. Mr. Rees, I'm asking you to unmute yourself. Start your video if you'd like to address the commission.
Yes, I would. Thank you very much, Walker. Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, my name is Clifford Rees. I'm a retired state government public health attorney in Santa Fe. I have had the privilege of serving the commission as a contract consultant on the procurement aspects of the code of ethics that you passed earlier this morning. I also want to comment on your legislative strategy. I totally agree that the commission's strategy to limit your 2021 legislative efforts in the long session makes sense in terms of addressing some of the structural issues that you've identified during the last year and a half of your existence. So I would like to make suggestions looking forward to the 2021 interim process that will begin after the 2021 long session adjourns. I'd like to make the following suggestions for consideration. by the commission at the appropriate time in the future. One would be to enact a public ethics code. Now, a code is simply a collection of similar statutes for a particular subject. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with codes that are already on the books, like the Children's Code, the Election Code, the Motor Vehicle Code. I think, and I was instrumental back in my public health law days at the Department of Health in the aftermath of 9/11 of creating an emergency powers code and legislation that was passed that we're using now for the first time in response to the COVID-19 response. I think it would be useful to collect as many as makes sense ethics statutes in state statute in a public ethics code. It would allow for them to be hopefully read together in a cohesive manner, and it would allow for the addition of future ethics related state statutes as the need arises. Within that proposed public ethics code, I would like to suggest adding a bill that was introduced but not passed in the 2019 legislative session that I helped create, working with Senator Sander Rue, and that is a Public Contracts Ethics Act. It was introduced in 2019 as Senate Bill 372. It simply put in one place the ethics provisions that relate to procurement that are currently scattered in the Governmental Conduct Act and the Procurement Code. I think it would make it easier for practitioners to find relevant procurement code, procurement related ethics provisions if they're in one place. And there is a model that can be worked from should the commission agree to propose that to the 2022 short session, which of course would need a message. And then finally, many of us who have worked with the Governmental Conduct Act would like to see a modernization, if you will, and some updates and perhaps filling some gaps in the Governmental Conduct Act. Paul Bierman and I, your consultant, worked on creating the Governmental Conduct Act Compliance Guide for the Attorney General's Office that was first published back in 2013. We identified several of these areas that need to be updated in that compliance guide, and some of those updates are reflected in Senate Bill 372 from the 2019 session, the Public Contracts Ethics Act. I won't get into the details here, discussion for a future time. So thank you very much for this opportunity to address the commission. I applaud the work you've done. Delighted to see how this, I've been working on the Ethics Commission creation since 2006, and I'm delighted to see the great staff that you've hired, the excellent commissioners who are guiding this process, and it has fulfilled certainly my wish and my goal to have a very high functioning ethics commission for the state of New Mexico. And just want to say how much I appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to address the commission in public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Reese, and thank you for your continued involvement in the work that you put into this over the years. Walker?
Thank you, Chair. The next meeting participant who I'm going to ask whether they would like to offer public comment is Ms. Deborah Condit. Ms. Condit, I'm asking you to unmute yourself now and asking you to start your video if you'd like to offer a public comment.
You hear me?
We can.
Okay. No, I have no public comments. My colleagues are online and they will be giving a comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Gwyneth Doland, I'm asking you to unmute yourself and start your video if you'd like to offer a public comment to the commission.
I have no public comment. Thank you, though.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Heather Ferguson. Ms. Ferguson, I'm asking you to unmute yourself and start the video if you'd like to offer public comment to the commission.
Hi, everyone. Sorry. Actually, Sydney Tejas from our staff is going to be offering public comment, and I will be here to support any questions that the commission may have after she does so. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have J. Har 2015. I'm asking you to unmute yourself to see if you'd like to offer a public comment to the commission.
Yeah, hi. Let me pull my tape. This is Jim Harrington, State Chair of Common Cause. I too am here just as backup for Sydney Tejas, who will be making our comments. And just in case she gets any technical legal questions she might want help with. Thank you. And thanks to the commissioners and the staff for all the work you do.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Okay. Next up, we have Judy's. I'm sorry, we have to go by sort of, we're going to old school internet handles here for just a little bit. We got Judy's computer.
Not me.
Okay, that's you. All right.
No, that's not me.
So it's not you. Okay. If Judy's computer wants to make a comment, we can get some comments from a computer. Otherwise, I'll be moving on to Kathleen Sabo.
I don't have any comments.
Thank you.
Would you mind identifying yourself just so our notes are clear?
I'm sorry, I tried to change the name and it didn't work. Judy Williams, League of Women Voters of New Mexico.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. All right, Kathleen Sabo, I'm asking you to unmute yourself and start video.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Nice to see you all again. And we've certainly appreciated the opportunity to appear before you at an earlier commission meeting. I'm going to keep my comments brief. We did submit written comments. We submitted them later than they probably were able to get into your packet, but they certainly are there. I'd like to say that Common Cause, who submitted comments as well, laid out some very strong arguments for limiting the amount of proposals and the number of acts that are addressed by the commission. We wrestled with that amongst our board, our legislative subcommittee. If you look at our comments, you'll see we're of two minds, almost literally. One is, yes, let's not wrestle with these things during a difficult time when public participation might not be allowed at all or optimum, and certainly in person, and to not open up acts that have required sort of delicate and nuanced negotiation in the past, over 40 years in some cases, to what could be ham-handed attempts by legislators to just sort of pile on. So, and they will address that. The other mind is, boy, this is an awesome power that the commission has been granted to recommend reform. And the commission has done a wonderful job stepping into the void that really existed as an official body. There's certainly plenty of people way before New Mexico Ethics Watch who have worked diligently to bring ethics to the forefront, some of whom people are right here in front of you. And what we don't want to see is a missed opportunity, because we know these substantive sessions only come around once every 2 years. And this is an awesome power that the commission has to direct things and to use their influence and their gravitas to move things in the right direction, lest we have to wait until 2023. And I know Jeremy alluded earlier to the fact that maybe we'll just have a budget session initially and then something later on in the year. And if that happens, then maybe, you know, the public will be able to participate more. Maybe we won't be so worried about intrusions into these acts that we don't want to see and wouldn't have any opportunity to really stop necessarily. So, you know, what I said in my comments, our comments, was that there's a balancing act that must take place here. And I don't want to, you know, be out of turn in saying that, but that's certainly what our board members and those of us on staff who participated in the meeting were really torn about this, because it's one of the, you know, few sort of proactive areas that the commission has to show their, you know, how serious they are and how mindful they are of reforms that need to happen. So if you do read our comments, you'll see we're really torn in this way amongst our board and amongst our staff. Other than that, we've gone and we've addressed some of the recommendations individually, and I'm not going to speak to them right now. We were thrilled, I will say, to see sort of this division between enforcement and administration that we think has been a long time coming, and we're in full support of that, and many other things that have been suggested. And we did take the liberty, this was a board discussion, to go ahead and suggest some other things that potentially the commission, should they move forward with legislative proposals, might want to address. So you may take the time to read those comments, but in advance of other people speaking, I just want to say we really appreciate what the commission has done. We recognize the power and the gravitas that the commission carries. We've been so grateful for the work you all have done and for hearing us as we speak on issues. And we wish you luck in deciding which way to proceed on this. So thank you very much for the opportunity to comment, and thank you for your work during the year.
Thank you, ma'am.
And Chair and Ms. Sabo, I just want to point out that the comments of both Common Cause and New Mexico Ethics Watch are posted on the Commission's website on the transparency page.
Thank you.
For everybody to read.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sabo. I'm going to place you on mute and stop your video now. Next up, we have Mr. Ken Resnick. Mr. Resnick, I'm asking you to unmute yourself and start your video if you'd like to offer a comment to the commission.
I have no comment other than I wish everybody a happy holidays in advance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Resnick. Next, we have Ms. Lily Irvin Vitella. Ms. Irvin Vitella, I'm asking you to unmute yourself and start your video if you'd like to offer a comment to the commission.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, and Director Ferris. I just want to start my comments with thanking you all for an incredible year of work. Wow, you were off and running and did such an incredible heavy lift. And also just to acknowledge that Director Ferris and his team were just more than generous with their time in terms of meeting with our small but very, very concerned and interested group, the New Mexicans for Ethics Coalition. So, and I'm excited to dig in more to your annual report and learn more from that as well. Related to policy change and legislative activity, I appreciate, as I was reviewing the work and thinking you all have done, I'd appreciate the discernment around areas where there can really be strengthening. But I echo the concerns of others about the timing and the ability to be successful during this legislative session at a distance. I think we're at a real disadvantage to have the kinds of conversations that are needed in this kind of nuanced policy. And given what I've learned from my colleagues at Ethics Watch and Common Cause and others about the challenges of getting the Ethics Commission in place in the first place, I think that caution is warranted because I think that folks, maybe I'm naive, but I think folks by and large really want to do the right thing and want to move New Mexico in the right direction when it comes to good governance. And in times of crisis, people are even more likely to be to revert to old patterns that feel safer when the world feels like it's changing. And so I wonder if we might see some decision-making or behaviors that are more protective rather than open-minded and visionary and transformative. And so, I trust that you all will assess and discern how best to move forward. But I can just say that as folks out in community who really care about these issues and want to be a part of it, I know that our capacity to be as effective as usual in terms of supporting good governance, it's like doing a dance with one leg, tied to the other. So with that, again, I thank you and appreciate the work that you all are doing.
Thank you, ma'am.
Walker, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rubin-Vitella. Next up, we have Marjorie Childress with New Mexico In Depth. Ms. Childress, do you have a comment for the commission?
No, I don't have a public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see here. Skipping down to Mr. Paul Biederman. Paul Biederman, do you have a comment for the commission? I'm asking you to unmute and start your video if you have one.
Okay, I don't seem to have a video, but
Yeah, we see you now.
We see you, Paul.
okay, now yeah. Hi, and thank you very much for this opportunity, Mr. Chairman. I want to first thank you for adopting the model code and point this morning in your on your agenda, and point out one thing, and that is that while it is pretty technical and does need some executive summary, certainly, I think it does address some of the issues that you heard talked about in terms of inconsistencies between ethics statutes, tries to resolve some of those and provide a guide to get through it where you really don't get the answers from the statutes. That said, I think Cliff pretty much said everything I was going to say and more about the possibility for a more consolidated ethics law, and certainly want to encourage you to look at combining, especially in the area of contracting and procurement, combine the ethics laws that are currently split between two statutes and not entirely consistent. I think it makes it a lot easier for the officials and for the public if there's a single source to go to. And I think the bill that Cliff talked about, which I commented on in my capacity as a Senate budget analyst as well, I think was quite a good start, and more than a start. I think it really went pretty far towards resolving some of those questions that people have. So otherwise, I just want to thank you for the remarkable level of work that I can see that you're performing, and and the privilege of being part of that effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Next on the list is Ricky Lee Chavez. Ricky Lee, I'm asking you to unmute yourself and start your video if you'd like to offer a public comment to the commission.
Thank you. Good morning. I was making sure it's still morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission and staff. Happy holidays. Thank you so much for your work. My name is Ricky Lee Chavez with Capital Counsel and Consulting. I do not have any public comment on what was discussed today, but did just want to take a brief moment and thank the commission and its staff for the work and for the transparency in the process. We really appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chavez.
Okay, next is Sydney Tellez. Ms. Tellez, I'm asking you to start your video and unmute yourself. If you I understand you will be offering a comment at today's meeting, so please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Walker. Thank you, Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Sydney Tellez, and I am the Associate Director with Common Cause New Mexico. I want to echo the thanks that folks have been giving to you all during this time. It really has been a truly unprecedented year for everyone, as we all have been enduring, and this has been quite a successful year for the first operational days and time of the State Ethics Commission. So thank you so much for working diligently to produce this very concise annual report and working jointly with the Secretary of State's office to come up with these legislative recommendations. I will not spend too much time echoing the same concerns that many of the people on this call have already shared in regards to a potentially remote legislative session. There's been so much work that's been put into establishing the State Ethics Commission. So I think that we're all on the same page here, that we just want to be as delicate as possible with making sure we empower this commission with the enforcement and autonomy that is required in order to be effective as a governmental body. Now, you know, we do have some concerns with a few of the recommendations to the State Ethics Commission Act for those reasons. Jointly, one of the recommendations that we do support, however, is the changing that definition from respondent to defendant. We do think that this recommendation is crucial to ensuring the expediency of the commission and the cases that you all have been dealing with in this past year. We also want to thank you for the statutory recommendation that was mentioned today about lobbyist regulation in terms of the 2-year cool down period. This is a issue that Common Cause has pushed for nearly 10 years and has not been successful in getting through the legislature. So we really were excited to hear about this recommendation from the State Ethics Commission and really appreciate the thought that went into that. We hope that it will breathe new life into this legislation that we have ran in the past, especially because the public does feel that, you know, lobbyists are more responsive to, that the legislature's more responsive to lobbyists. And our annual polling shows every year that that just continues to grow. And we are one of few states that does not have this type of regulation put on former legislators who then become lobbyists. It's actually something that has been passed at the federal level for several years now. And so for that, thank you so much for all of the work that you have put into this commission in the past year. And we look forward to making sure that the commission has the budget to operate effectively and that your autonomy and your powers are not subtracted during this next legislative session. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Tony Ortiz. Mr. Ortiz, I've asked you to unmute yourself and start your video if you'd like to address the commission.
Thank you, Walker. I have no comments. I'll just simply say everybody be safe and wish you all happy holidays. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, and then our final meeting participant is here on just a phone number. It's got a 404 area code. Ask you to unmute yourself and identify yourself if you'd like to offer a public comment to the commission.
Hi, I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I believe I've covered everyone who's participating in the meeting. If anyone who I didn't call on, if I mistakenly skipped someone, send me a message in the chat.
Chairman.
Chris
Walker,
Meckles is on, Walker.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh.
I didn't think Brian Metzger had an opportunity to say anything. Maybe I missed it.
He was the first one on and indicated he had no comment.
He said no comment. I did not hear that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's see here. We have, as Jeremy pointed out, Chris Meckles is here. Mr. Meckles, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and start your video if you'd like to address the commission for public comment.
Yes, thank you. I do have a comment on one specific area, which I think shows up some of the problems and issues. I've had some experience with the financial disclosure statements, and I think I've brought to your attention in the past. Currently, for some years now, I've had difficulties getting the Law Enforcement Academy Board to do financial disclosures, and it's frustrating because the people that ought to be looking into this, and I suspect will be an ongoing problem, is, for example, the board counsel should, and I've repeatedly asked them to advise the board that they must do disclosures. This seems to have no effect. I've talked to the Attorney General's office, and though we at some point agreed that her staff ought to advise the board to meet their requirement here, that's had no effect. If you look today at the Law Enforcement Academy Board, 4 of their members have not filed financial disclosures. I have, outside of just badgering these people year after year and repeatedly mailing the board members directly, it seems that I can finally get them to make disclosures. You know, it takes months of badgering the board members individually. I mean, this is unacceptable. The board council of all these boards, not just the Law Enforcement Academy board, must step up and advise the members of these boards and commissions that the disclosures are required. They must do it, but to this point, no luck whatsoever. That's the kind of problem we're facing, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Meckles. I have one more participant who's joined under just first name Nick. Nick, I'm asking you to unmute yourself and start your video if you'd like to offer a public comment to the commission.
He won't stop.
Oh, it's our first Zoom bomb. Finally got it.
Sort of.
Oh.
Nice, Walker.
I'd say it was pretty amateurish myself, but more of a Zoom pellet gun.
Walker, I don't even think that the duration of that Zoom bomb surpassed 1 full second.
It was a Zoom strafe.
Kudos to you.
Zoom strafe.
Walker, we also have ADR phone 2018. ARD.
Yeah, ARD phone 2018. Yes, I believe that's my spouse, Amy. I'm going to ask her to unmute herself, start her video if she'd like to offer a public comment. I texted her to ask her if she wanted to offer a public comment. She hasn't responded. So, she's declined. Okay. Well, everyone, no comment from my spouse today. I'll have to wait till next week.
That was a Zoom bomb too.
Yeah, she might have been wondering whether to Zoom bomb us, and then decided that Nick took care of the issue.
All right.
I think that covers it, unless Sonny or Jeremy sees anyone else who hasn't been given an opportunity.
Chair, I think you're ready to go.
All right.
Good. Thanks very much. Thank you, Walker. Okay, next item 15, commission authorizations regarding specific legislation, if any, upon receiving public comment. Jeremy?
So Chair, this is an opportunity for the commissioners to make amendments to the final sections of the annual report to direct specific legislative recommendations or bills in anticipation of the upcoming session, whenever that might be.
Jeremy, are we looking at page 53? Where it says discussion draft?
Yes, ma'am, but you're also looking at from page 46 of the meeting materials through the end of the annual report.
Let's start with first, Commissioner Becker. Do you have anything you wish to see added?
No, sir.
Commissioner Bluestone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the approach taken in the annual report. As I said earlier, I think it's excellent. And I think that we should, as the commenters who sent in the written comments, Common Cause and New Mexico Ethics Watch, and what was echoed again today, I think we should be careful about what we propose in a public limited session like is being talked about, where the level of public participation can be restricted in light of the pandemic. Having said that, I think that the two-tier approach of us just endorsing as our affirmative legislation the fixes that have been proposed to the State Ethics Commission Act, what we've worked out with the Secretary of State's office on administrative and enforcement responsibilities, I think that's a good focus and a limited focus that we ought to go forward with. And I like the second tier approach of being prepared to offer comments on substantive issues that we may not affirmatively seek to change, particularly given the limited public participation that can unfold in this next session, but that we may, based on our own experience, want to comment on in our annual report and be prepared to weigh in on if legislation does get introduced by others. And with that in mind, I have three specific suggestions. One is we've had litigation and complaints dealing with the Campaign Reporting Act and the failure to disclose the source of contributions of independent expenditures, so-called dark money. And we have had some success in at least providing through litigation disclosure of amounts that were expended and to whom they were expended. But there's still an ongoing issue that's been arisen with respect to what the source of the funds really is. And I think that our new law that was enacted in 2019 is designed to provide for full and fair disclosure. So again, being cautious, but not wanting to open up the old Governor King box of Pandora's that could unfold if we tried to affirmatively amend the independent expenditure disclosure provision. I think, and we've shared emails about this, that I think we should consider, if the subject does get introduced, adding in a recommendation that those contributions that are not being disclosed, because the contributors are saying you should not use their funds for independent expenditures, to require that they be deposited in a segregated bank account in order to be sure that that money is not used for independent expenditures. Jeremy has language that we've circulated based on conversations with the Campaign Legal Center, and I think with Common Cause's experts as well. And I think we ought to be prepared to go on record in the annual report as endorsing that kind of an approach to be consistent with the purpose, I believe, of the dark money disclosure provision, so that there is fair disclosure of what the real source of funds are for these independent expenditures. So that's the first recommendation. That is a second tier proposal that we prepared as a commission to endorse an amendment to the Campaign Reporting Act to provide for more disclosure of the real source of funds of these independent expenditures. The second amendment that I think we should also consider noting in our annual report under this second tier of proposals deals with the Lobbyist Regulation Act and the recommendation that's currently in the annual report to require lobbyists to file a report 14 days after the session ends about the bills on which they worked, either supporting or opposing or took another position on. I personally think that only requiring a report after the session isn't as helpful as requiring one or more reports during the session, so that the public can have full and fair notice about what lobbyists are working on in trying to affect the public's business. And particularly since lobbyists have to disclose within 48 hours whenever they make a contribution or an expenditure of $500 or more, I think it would be in our interest to require some more disclosures by lobbyists of the items they're working on during the session. I've given this a little thought, and I know that Jeremy was able to ask Rebecca and Walker, and they did some quick research even just yesterday of some other statutes and federal provisions that follow up on this. Personally, I would like us to consider something like a twofold disclosure. One where a lobbyist would have to list, say, a week after the session starts, the bills that they know they are supporting or opposing or taking another position on, because that would include all the pre-filed bills. And then maybe a second report 1 week after the bill introduction deadline, which is halfway through each session, so that the public could again know all the bills that a lobbyist is trying to affect in the public's business, and provide some reasonable fair notice disclosure about. That way, if a lobbyist, for example, has 5 bills that they're working on before, say, the Senate Conservation Committee, and the lobbyist wants to spend $500 or more for the dinner for that committee, at least the public and the press can have some opportunity to know that that may be related to the bills that were being lobbied. And I would say that our proposal should not be just on specific bill numbers, but also on specific items that the lobbyists are trying to affect. Because I think that much of the lobbying that's done is really about the appropriations process and about the funding for particular projects, either in the severance tax bond funding bill, or even in House Bill 2 in the General Appropriations Act. So I think we ought to consider endorsing a general proposal that would require some fair notice of lobbyists of the bill and or specific items they're working on, at least say twice during each session, so that the public can know what lobbyists are trying to do to affect the public's business. The third and final item I'd like to recommend that we consider adopting in our annual report and as part of our legislative proposals is also something we've discussed before, and that is following up on a recommendation we got from New Mexico Ethics Watch to work with the Secretary of State's office to see if they would be open to what I think would be in their interest and the public interest, to giving them rulemaking authority in both the Lobbyist Regulation Act and the Financial Disclosure Act, so that there could be some more open, fair deliberation and meat put on the bones, if you will, on those important laws. I know that there are discussions that have been ongoing. I don't know if there's been any recent developments, but I think that these 3 recommendations to our legislative package of endorsements, as what we've described as our second tier of endorsements, to provide for some disclosure, more disclosure about the source of funds for independent expenditures, if that gets raised by others during the process, to provide for some fair disclosure of what specific bills or items lobbyists are working on during, and thirdly, for the rulemaking authority to the Secretary of State's office for both the Lobbyist Regulation Act and the Financial Disclosure Act. I think those would be 3 recommendations I would like us to adopt as part of our annual report and our legislative strategy to just be prepared for in the next session. I'm sorry this has taken so long. I had hoped to be more succinct, but I failed. But I apologize and thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, Stuart. Commissioner Carruthers?
I have no other recommendations.
Thank you. Commissioner Solomon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support Commissioner Bluestone's recommendations, and also really want to just extend appreciation to the different groups, the combined Ethics Watch Coalition, and for their admonitions as well, because I think have had substantial experience during the legislative processes. I think their admonitions are well intentioned to guide us in our focus. Sorry about that. I got my grandchildren's little dogs that are raising me. I'm trying to make a comment. Maybe they're telling me to shut up. So
it's another Zoom bomb.
Those are my yeah, I think a Zoom bomb. Anyway, those are my comments, and thank you again, participants in the public comment section, for your your observations and then your admonitions as well. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Commissioner Solomon. Commissioner Villanueva? Judy?
Oh, you're not muted. You're not muted, Commissioner Villanueva, but we're not hearing you speak for some reason. No.
I have no further comments. I would suggest that in reading, perhaps we could synthesize, Stuart, in order to allow the greatest possible use, would be to maybe amend the amendment you would propose would be for in the report to endorse that the commission would take a position of endorsing anything which in general tended to require greater disclosure. I think they all kind of go to that, but
I think they do all go to greater disclosure, but I think if you want a motion, I would move that we amend the annual report to reflect the commission endorsing as a second tier of legislative issues.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
The Campaign Reporting Act, independent expenditure, and the other.
Okay. And Commissioner Williams, while we're waiting to see if Commissioner Villanueva is there, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still with you, but I'm in a state of confusion as usual. I was looking at page 53, and this was a discussion draft. Are we discussing that?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, that's subject to discussion, as is the other kinds of recommendations, like how Commissioner Bluestone made for items that aren't in these legislative recommendations but ought to be.
So can I discuss that now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at this discussion draft, and I have read, I assume this is a draft that you want to take to the legislature, the comments if we approve them, is that correct?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, this is a discussion draft that the Secretary of State's office is currently working on. And after the commission and the Secretary of State's office is agreed upon all of the edits to these statutes, then we'll seek a legislator to carry the bill.
Okay, well, with regard to paragraph A, where it says the Secretary of State shall conduct a thorough examination of at least 10% of all reports filed during a year, I wondered if you could explain the procedure.
So Chair and Commissioner Williams, this provision of the Campaign Reporting Act is law that currently exists that empowers the Secretary of State's office to audit a subset of Campaign Reporting Act reports that are filed with them to ensure compliance with the Campaign Reporting Act. I think the idea is that whereas they don't have the capacity to perhaps review every report that's filed with them for accuracy with the law or compliance with the law, that they do conduct a random audit of Campaign Reporting Act reports that are filed with them and work on compliance with the law based on that random audit. And I think that's just part of the Secretary of State's annual normal operating procedure.
Okay, so this is what are we is this as it is written in the statute now? Or is this something that we're recommending?
Yes. Okay. So Chair and Commissioner Williams, the discussion drafts like this, the text that's the strike through text is language that we're proposing be taken out of the statute, and underlined text is language that we're proposing be put into the statute, and the other normal text is just already part of the law, and we're not recommending a change to it one way or the other.
So is this particular section, is this for just elected legislators, or is it for all offices?
So Chair and Commissioner Williams, the reports examination would be a provision that deals with any entity that has an obligation to file under the Campaign Reporting Act. That could be a legislator, it could be a state official that's seeking office, candidates, and anyone to whom the Campaign Reporting Act applies. So also persons making independent expenditures, political committees, I believe are subject to the same kind of reporting requirements.
Okay, on page 54, it says, I have a question. How will this, it says, a copy of this report shall be transmitted to the State Ethics Commission and the Attorney General for enforcement. How will it be enforced? It's that this report is a public record open to public inspection and retention.
So Chair and Commissioner Williams, I believe the idea here is that after the Secretary of State's office conducts their random audit of Campaign Reporting Act reports, and to the extent that they see non-compliance with the Campaign Reporting Act, they can inform both the State Ethics Commission and the Attorney General of that non-compliance. And then the State Ethics Commission could either pursue a civil enforcement action or an administrative complaint that it initiates itself.
Well, if it goes to the, does it go to the Attorney General simultaneously when it comes to the State Ethics Commission? Do both of our offices get notice of this?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, I believe that's the idea.
Okay. So it would, and who would enforce it? Would it be us or the State Attorney General?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, under this statute, both agencies would have the power to enforce it. Currently, the Attorney General's office is the only agency that receives this report now, but the inclusion of the State Ethics Commission into this provision might give you an indication of who, in fact, will actually be doing the enforcement.
It's either or. So
Yes,
if they file it with us, we would do the enforcement. If they file it with the Attorney General, they would be the ones to enforce it.
And very likely, if both agencies were keen to do Campaign Reporting Act enforcement, Commissioner Williams, we would need some type of memorandum of understanding or joint powers agreement to sort that out.
Okay, on page 55, it states the State Ethics Commission shall issue advisory opinions when requested in writing to do so on matters concerning that act. And my question is the SOS in agreement with this?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, I know that one of the additions that the Secretary of State's office will press for is the consultation of that office with any advisory opinions that the commission issues regarding the interpretation of the Campaign Reporting Act. And that makes sense because the Secretary of State's office provides the bulk of the advice on compliance with this statute. The entities that are subject to CRA filings call the Elections Division quite often to ask for their advice on interpretations about how to comply, and that will continue under this statute as well. And so to the extent that the commission issues a formal advisory opinion interpreting some provision of the Campaign Reporting Act, it's important that the Secretary of State's office be involved in what's in that opinion.
Okay. And what is lined out is what we're recommending to be taken out of the statute. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All these things that are lined out. Okay. Now on page 58, paragraph A, I have a question. If Secretary of State reasonably believes that a person committed or is about to commit a violation of Campaign Reporting Act, the Secretary of State shall refer the matter to the State Ethics Commission, the Attorney General, or District Attorney for enforcement. Who chooses where to file it?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, I believe the Secretary of State's office would have the discretion as to where to send the matter among all of those other state agencies that have the power to enforce.
Okay, so they would make the selection as to who it would be sent to for enforcement. Is that correct?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Another question. On page 60, I have a question on section A where it says, Secretary of State shall forward complaints it receives alleging violations of Campaign Reporting Act to the State Ethics Commission in accordance with a formalized agreement. Don't we have a formalized agreement now?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, yes, we do.
Okay. And okay, on page 62, it says on paragraph D, my question is, will we be notified? It's if the Secretary of State determines that a provision of the Campaign Reporting Act for which a penalty may be imposed has been violated, the Secretary of State shall file a written notice set forth in the violations and the fine that may be imposed and inform the reporting individual. In this whole paragraph, my question is, will we be notified of this?
Chair and Commissioner Williams, I think the answer is maybe. It depends on whether or not the Secretary of State's office can achieve compliance with entities that, for whatever reason, don't file a report with the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary of State's office can issue the notices of final action, and if the Secretary of State's office doesn't achieve compliance, then the Ethics Commission will likely be notified for potential enforcement.
Okay, so if they don't respond, the person who's violating the campaign reporting requirement, so if they don't respond, then that would be sent to us, to the Ethics Commission.
I believe so, but I think it would require not only not responding, but having a fine levied and refusing to pay the fine. The Secretary of State's office will still, under this statute, continue to do the bulk of what it already does with trying to achieve everyday ordinary filing compliance. The State Ethics Commission doesn't have the staff for that, and it's really not what the commission is built to do. But if the Secretary of State's office encounters an intransigent entity under the Campaign Reporting Act that refuses to proper filings and refuses to pay their fine, at that point the Ethics Commission might be involved.
On page 64, paragraph B, it states the Campaign Reporting Act may be enforced by the State Ethics Commission, the Attorney General, or the District Attorney in the county where the candidate resides, where a political committee has its principal place of business, or where the violation occurred. That really confused me. Why not just have one office to file it from? So what is this paragraph saying? That that the district, that if they want to file it with the district attorney, it must be in the county where the candidate resides.
So Chair and Commissioner Williams, this provision operates as a venue provision. It directs where the agencies that have enforcement power may properly file their enforcement actions. But in kind of sidebar conversations, Commissioner Bluestone has queried whether or not the Ethics Commission is properly in this section of the Campaign Reporting Act, which might be read to be exclusively attached to criminal penalties. And if that's right, then the Ethics Commission really doesn't have a place in this particular section. But to answer your question, it operates as a venue provision that tells where the agencies that are authorized to file suits, where to file them.
Okay, so they could file them with the district attorney in the county where the complaint emanated from.
It's more like the district attorney would file the lawsuit in the county where the candidate or entity resides.
On page 65, paragraph A, in addition to a fine, a certified candidate found in violation of that act may be required to return to the fund all amounts distributed to the candidate from the fund. Well, could the other entities impose this as well? Other entities who have, does this apply to other entities as far as the fine is concerned?
So Chair and Commissioner Williams, this is now onto the Voter Action Act, which is the Public Campaign Financing Act that the state has for appellate judges and PRC members. And I suppose at some point it will just be appellate judges. And so it's really a statute that deals with appellate judges going forward using state public campaign finance monies to finance their election campaigns. And so it wouldn't apply to any other entity. It would just be a statute that applies to appellate judicial candidates.
And let's see if I have any more questions. There's quite a bit of revision here. And are we going to discuss this? After I get to finish with my questions.
So Chair and Commissioner Williams, to give you a sense of the overall theme of what's happening in these amendments, these proposed amendments to the Campaign Reporting Act, the Lobbyist Regulation Act, the Voter Action Act, and the Financial Disclosure Act. The idea is to separate out the administration and enforcement responsibilities and roles, such that the Secretary of State's office continues with their role in administering the statutes, being the agency that deals with filers, the repository for the filings. The State Ethics Commission, on the other hand, takes more of the role of enforcing violations of these statutes and adjudicating alleged violations of these statutes.
Those are all my questions. Thank you for answering them.
Thank you. Commissioner Villanueva, are you back with us?
We still having microphone issues, it looks like.
Can you get a signal from her whether we should proceed or not? If she can hear us, maybe she can give you a thumbs up.
Let me see if I can get her on speakerphone here, and then patch her through that way.
Commissioner Villanueva, you can also chat in your questions and we can read them aloud and respond to them if it comes to that.
Yeah, I don't want to disenfranchise her.
I wish I was there where you are, Judge Lang, on the beach with the
I wish I were on the beach as well, but as you can see, I'm wearing more than a simple t-shirt. I've got a couple of layers on, so it's it's a
Got her on
misconstruction.
You got her on the cell phone? She's holding up her cell phone.
Walker, you're now muted.
Can you all hear me now?
We can.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to.
Judy's muted.
I have Commissioner Villanueva on speakerphone. I'm gonna hold her up to the microphone here.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I have this question.
I think we're getting feedback here, unfortunately, from my phone. I don't know what the best way to do this is. Jeremy, Sonny, you have any ideas?
She could text us a question. She could text one of us the question. We could just read it aloud that way.
Judy, if you're at a keyboard, you could type in your question quickly. There's a lot of like reverb and feedback when we try to do it over the speakerphone.
That Zoom bomb really hurt us, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it's folks who have two or more microphones hooked to their computer. I think it just happened to me as well.
For reference, Judy, or Commissioner Villanueva, the chat option is under More.
So, Sonny, where are we here in this adventure?
I think Commissioner Villanueva is writing out a question or two for us.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Here. Commissioner Villanueva, you could also join the meeting by dialing the number on the agenda, by dialing on your phone that way.
While they're doing that, Mr. Chairman, I want to respond to Commissioner Bluestone's recommendations. And it called to my mind a term I learned a long time ago. You quit preaching and now you're starting to meddle.
Okay, we've received a message from Commissioner
No
Villanueva. No other questions or recommendations. Okay, so we're now doing, we'll do smoke signals next time.
Yes, what is a Zoom bomb?
It's what happened to us earlier, very briefly, where someone played some loud music.
Somebody's uninvited and they try to disrupt the meeting.
Really? Oh, okay.
Okay, so we'll figure out where the hell we are here.
I think there's a motion on that Commissioner Bluestone might have made.
Well, Commissioner Bluestone is going to make a motion, I think, right?
I'm prepared to make a motion to summarize what I said before, that we amend the annual report to support, as part of our second tier, of legislative positions. Number one, more disclosure of the source of funds for independent expenditures. Number two, timely disclosure by lobbyists of the bills and items they are lobbying and what their positions are. And number three, granting the Secretary of State rulemaking authority under the Lobbyist Regulation Act and the Financial Disclosure Act.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Everybody's had an opportunity to comment, but is there anybody that's had something come to them that they feel they need to weigh in on this before we move to a vote? Oh, okay, if not, Commissioner Baker?
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes.
Commissioner Carruthers?
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva? If you can just give Walker some sort of...
She's holding up a sign saying yes, she agrees.
Yes.
All right.
We'll make up some official signs like that for going forward.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Thank you. The motion passes.
We now move to a paper ballot, which can of course be audited.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. Okay. Before moving on to the last couple of items, I want to, and the commissioners know about this, but for the benefit of staff, for Jeremy, Walker, Wendy, and Becky, I'm sure it would have applied to you had you been here, but at Commissioner Williams' encouragement, and she undertook the heavy labor on this, I want to read a letter that will be committed to commission stationery with my signature on behalf of the entire commission. And it will read as follows to each of the four of you, and Sunny as well. The Ethics Commissioners of the New Mexico Ethics Commission wish to recognize your outstanding performance as the Executive Director and fill in your respective positions of the New Mexico State Ethics Commission. Your assignment was an historic one because you were the first to be employed in this position. The Ethics Commission was established by statute in 2018 after almost 40 years of attempts by governors, legislators, advocacy groups, and citizens who wanted accountability in state government. In 2018, 75% of the voters of New Mexico voted to establish an ethics commission. After your selection, you immediately took the reins of your office, hiring staff consisting of Walker Boyd, General Counsel, Wendy George, Finance and Administration Director, and Sunny Haqqani, Director of Communications. The task before you was a challenging one, finding office space, selecting equipment, furniture, and other necessary items to work with, and getting the word out to communities throughout New Mexico that the State Ethics Commission was opened for business on January 1, 2020. It should be noted that many citizens in the state were skeptical about accomplishing the mission as set forth in the statute and said that the commission would end up being political hacks and a paper tiger. Your leadership and the devotion and professionalism of your staff have proven them wrong. Under your guidance and leadership in the first year of operation, a proposed code of ethics has been drafted and published for comment and is in the final stages of completion. 36 complaints have been filed and 33 cases have been closed. Joint powers agreements have been formulated and approved with the Office of the Secretary of State of New Mexico and the State Procurement Division. Advocacy groups and citizens in general are notified of the Ethics Commission meetings and are invited to attend and comment. The staff have attended meetings and have been speakers on ethics issues. Op-ed pieces have been written by you and your staff and published in newspapers around the state. Budgets have been prepared, submitted, and accepted by the Legislative Finance Committee. Training has been provided to government officials, public employees, government contractors, and lobbyists, and presentations have been made to CLE classes to attorneys. You and your staff have evaluated state statutes relating to ethics issues and proposed changes or amendments to strengthen the language and actions to be taken for violations. A brochure has been published and disseminated to the public, providing information on filing complaints to the Ethics Commission. Considering the accomplishment of your office in 1 year demonstrates the leadership you have provided and the competence and professionalism to your staff. The Ethics Commissioners appreciate your responsiveness to our requests and want to commend both you and your staff for making the Ethics Commission a functioning, successful organization committed to providing the citizens of this state transparency and good government. Signed by yours truly as the chair on behalf of the Ethics Commission, with copies to Mr. Boyd, Mr. Haqqani, and Ms. George. So thank you very much. And thank you for undertaking that unsolicitedly, Commissioner Williams.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner Vino. I note your written message as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All
Thank
right.
you, Commissioner.
The next meeting is set for the first Friday in February. Did I hear somebody else? No. Okay. The next
Friday of what?
First Friday in February. And we always are, of course, at the whim of necessity, should there be a reason we need to convene on short notice.
Commissioner Villanueva has a comment or a question she was raising there. Commissioner Williams had an announcement, question mark. Commissioner Williams, do you have an announcement?
Oh, me? I'm sorry. Yes, first of all, I want to wish everybody a happy Christmas, Merry Hanukkah, a happy Kwanzaa, and may you all be safe. And I know it's going to be hard to not be with families like we usually are. I want to let you know that I will be going to the Mayo Clinic on December the 11th because I have a little leak in my aortic valve. And all I told the doctors is I'm Jewish, so don't put a pig valve in there. And agreed. I just kidding. But I did want to let you know that I will be going there and hopefully I'll be back and running like I like to run more than I do. But I want to thank everyone for your support. And I really appreciate this wonderful group that I've been working with, and I hope to see you after my successful excursion to the Mayo Clinic. So that's what I want to let you know.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. Yes, best of luck, Francis. Be safe.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll see you on the first Friday in February, unless the legislature or other intervening forces dictate otherwise. If not, I will declare adjournment. I don't really think we need a motion. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Bye, everyone. Happy holidays.
Be safe, everybody.